In the narrow alleys of Sham Shui Po, one of Hong Kong's poorest districts, a boy with a crippled leg once dreamed of walking like everyone else. He couldn't. Born in 1948 to a family so poor that 6 people shared a single bed, Vincent Cheng Hoi-Chuen spent his childhood watching ships drift across Victoria Harbour, wondering how people on the other side lived. His parents worked endlessly, yet there was never enough. At 6 months old, polio struck, leaving him with a permanent disability. Doctors said he'd never live a normal life. But what no one knew was that the same illness that took away his ability to walk would give him the will to climb higher than anyone else. Decades later, this same boy, the one who once slept on the top bunk of a crowded tenement, would rise to become the first Chinese chairman of HSBC, a position once reserved for British elites since the bank's founding in 1865. His journey wasn't paved with luck, but with hardship, humility, and a belief that destiny can be rewritten through effort. In a city where wealth often defines worth, he became proof that even the poorest child could stand taller than the towers that once looked down on him. This is not just a story about success, it's about resilience, kindness, and the unbreakable human spirit. The question is, how did he do it? And what did he have to sacrifice along the way? In post-war Hong Kong, the skyline had not yet risen. The city was a maze of corrugated rooftops, rickety tenements, and alleyways echoing with the cries of survival. It was here, in a cramped apartment in Sham Shui Po, that Vincent Cheng Hoi-Chuen came into the world, fragile, poor, and soon to be broken by fate. At only 6 months old, he was diagnosed with polio, a disease that attacked his leg muscles and left him partially disabled. His parents, unable to afford proper treatment, could only watch as their youngest son struggled to stand. In a city obsessed with movement, he was a boy forced to crawl before he could dream. Yet that same limitation became his earliest teacher. He learned patience where others demanded speed, and endurance where others sought ease. Every day, as his brothers ran outside to play, Vincent stayed behind with books that became his escape. By the time he was 10, he had already developed a quiet understanding that his legs might fail him, but his mind could carry him anywhere. Life in the 1950s was cruel for the working poor. His father worked long hours as a clerk, while his mother stitched clothes late into the night. 6 people lived in one room. The ceiling dripped during monsoons, and meals often consisted of little more than rice and soy sauce. Yet, in that hardship, a fire was kindled. Vincent's mother constantly reminded him, "The world won't slow down for you, so you must find your own way to catch up." Those words became a prophecy. He limped to school every morning, clutching his cane, often mocked by classmates who called him the slow one. But inside, he was already racing against fate itself. At school, Vincent excelled. He was drawn to numbers, logic, and the hidden rhythms of economics. He would stay late after class, asking teachers about the invisible systems that controlled wealth and opportunity. When his teachers saw his passion, they encouraged him to aim higher, though few believed a boy with a disability from a poor family could ever climb that far. But Vincent had already made a vow. He would prove them wrong. By the time he reached his teenage years, Hong Kong was changing. Refugees from mainland China poured into the city, industries were growing, and the seeds of a financial hub were being planted. Yet, the divide between rich and poor remained stark. Vincent often stood on Nathan Road, watching businessmen in suits step out of polished cars. To him, they looked like gods, untouchable, perfect, and distant. What he didn't know was that one day he would walk among them. When he entered the Chinese University of Hong Kong, it was more than an academic achievement. It was a declaration of war against everything that had once defined him. Despite his limited mobility, he threw himself into student life, joining clubs, volunteering, and tutoring poorer children. It was there he first uttered the sentence that would later define his legacy: when God closes a door, he leaves a crack somewhere else. That crack, for Vincent, was about to widen into a doorway no one could have predicted. A chance encounter, one born out of kindness, would soon alter the entire trajectory of his life. A foreign stranger would step into his world, and from that moment, nothing would ever be the same again. It happened on an ordinary afternoon, one of those humid Hong Kong days when the air felt thick with dust and salt from the harbor. Vincent Cheng, then a young university student, was volunteering for the Hong Kong Society for the Blind, helping elderly residents navigate the city's chaotic streets. He wasn't paid. He wasn't even sure why he did it, except that it made him feel useful in a world that often treated him as fragile. That day, while guiding a blind foreign man who had recently arrived from Britain, he didn't know he was about to meet the person who would forever change his fate. The man was polite, soft-spoken, and entirely dependent on Vincent to get around. They spent weeks together, taking buses, eating cheap noodles, and discussing life. One day, the man asked Vincent about his dreams. Vincent, embarrassed, said he wanted to serve society but wasn't sure how. The man laughed. "You're already doing that," he said. Then, almost casually, he added, "If you ever wish to study abroad, come to New Zealand. Education there isn't expensive, and you'd fit right in." Vincent didn't take it seriously at first. He had never left Hong Kong. His family could barely afford rice, let alone plane tickets. But something about the man's sincerity lingered. Weeks later, the man left Hong Kong, leaving behind an address and a simple message: "If you're brave enough to take the next step, write to me." For months, the letter sat untouched in Vincent's drawer. But as graduation approached, reality closed in. He had no job lined up, no money, and no clear path forward. His disability made many employers hesitant. He remembered the man's words, "If you're brave enough." So, with trembling hands, he wrote back. A few months later, a reply came, a scholarship offer from a university in New Zealand, and a promise that the man would help him get settled. Vincent sold the few things he owned, borrowed money from friends, and boarded a plane with just $60 in his pocket, the entirety of his savings. It was his first time leaving Hong Kong, and as the city lights faded beneath him, he had no idea if he'd ever come back. Life in New Zealand was brutally hard. He studied economics during the day and worked nights at a gas station, cleaning bathrooms and restocking shelves. His limp made every shift a test of pain and endurance. But something unexpected happened there. People treated him with dignity. Strangers held doors for him. Professors listened when he spoke. For the first time, he felt equal. He often said later that New Zealand gave him more than an education. It gave him self-worth. It taught him that kindness could exist even in the most unlikely places. He finished his studies with top marks and returned to Hong Kong a changed man, still poor, still walking with a cane, but armed with confidence and perspective that no one could take away. Back home, Hong Kong was in the midst of transformation. The financial boom of the late 1970s was reshaping the city, and banks were racing to modernize. One of them was the Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corporation, HSBC. When Vincent applied for a position there, no one expected the quiet man with a limp and a foreign degree to last a month. But within weeks, his sharp mind and calm precision caught the attention of senior executives. They had no idea they had just hired the man who would one day lead them all. When Vincent Cheng joined HSBC in the late 1970s, he was one of only a handful of local Chinese employees working at the bank's headquarters. At that time, the upper floors of the gleaming glass tower in Central were reserved almost exclusively for British executives. Most local staff never made it past middle management. But Vincent wasn't there to fit in. He was there to learn everything. His first assignment was in the risk analysis department, a place most bankers considered dull. It involved studying global financial conditions, exchange rates, and potential crises. But Vincent found beauty in the chaos of numbers. He spent nights analyzing how markets behaved like living organisms, emotional, unpredictable, yet strangely logical. His supervisors noticed his discipline, but they underestimated his insight. By 1986, he was promoted to chief economist of HSBC, responsible for advising the bank on policy and market movements. It was a bold choice for a man still seen by some as an outsider. Yet, Vincent's sharp instincts soon justified it. The following year, he made a call that would stun Hong Kong's financial world. In October 1987, after studying weeks of data and market patterns, Vincent wrote a report warning that Hong Kong's stock and real estate markets were dangerously inflated, a bubble ready to burst. He predicted that an international crash was imminent. His memo quietly circulated through HSBC's leadership, but few took it seriously. The city was euphoric, the stock market was soaring, and optimism was everywhere. Then came October 19, 1987, Black Monday. Global markets collapsed, wiping out billions in hours. In Hong Kong, the Hang Seng Index plunged 33% in a single day, the biggest drop in its history. Investors panicked, fortunes evaporated, and chaos gripped the trading floors. But at HSBC, something remarkable happened. The bank was ready. Acting on Vincent's earlier analysis, senior executives had moved to hedge key positions before the crash. When the dust settled, HSBC had not only survived but had quietly profited while others burned. Overnight, Vincent Cheng went from an obscure economist to the man who saw the storm before it hit. The foreign board members, once skeptical of him, now saw him as indispensable. His name began circulating in internal circles as the man with the sixth sense. But Vincent didn't gloat. When asked how he knew, he said simply, "You can't predict the future. You can only see what others refuse to look at." That humility became his signature. He refused to see finance as a game of greed, but as a science of balance between risk and reward, ambition and ethics. His reports began shaping HSBC's long-term strategies across Asia, influencing everything from property investments to trade policies. However, success also brought new challenges. In a bank long dominated by colonial hierarchy, a Chinese man climbing the ladder was still viewed with quiet resistance. There were boardrooms where his opinions were dismissed or delayed, projects where credit went to someone else. But Vincent had learned patience from a lifetime of struggle. He focused on results, not recognition. His turning point came in 1989, when the Hong Kong government, recognizing his economic insight, invited him to join the Central Policy Unit, a think tank that shaped the city's post-handover strategy. It was a rare move for a banker, crossing into public service, but Vincent accepted. To him, Hong Kong's stability mattered more than personal gain. What he didn't know then was that this decision, to serve both finance and the people, would make him not only a respected banker, but also a bridge between China, Hong Kong, and the world. And soon, that bridge would be tested like never before. By the early 1990s, Vincent Cheng had become one of the most trusted economic minds in Hong Kong. His years in the Central Policy Unit gave him a rare dual perspective. He could see both sides of Hong Kong's uncertain future, the anxieties of a global financial hub soon to return to Chinese sovereignty, and the cautious confidence of Beijing preparing to reclaim its Pearl of the Orient. It was a time of tension, diplomacy, and deals whispered behind closed doors. And Vincent, the son of a poor tailor crippled by polio, suddenly found himself seated at those very tables. When he returned to HSBC in 1991, the world had changed, and so had he. No longer just an economist, he was now a strategist, a mediator, and a symbol of what Hong Kong could become, a city that blended East and West, tradition and ambition. He was soon promoted to Group General Manager, making him the highest-ranking Chinese executive in the bank's 120-year history. But that title came with a burden: to prove that a local could lead one of the world's most powerful financial institutions without losing its global credibility. Inside the bank's headquarters, he was both respected and tested. The British executives saw him as their local expert, while Hong Kong staff saw him as one of their own who had made it. He navigated both worlds with quiet skill, bowing when necessary, speaking firmly when required. His strength lay not in confrontation, but in connection. He understood that banking was not just about money, it was about trust. And trust, especially in a city standing between empires, was a fragile currency. In 1995, Vincent was appointed to the board of directors of HSBC Holdings, marking the first time in the bank's long colonial history that a Chinese man sat among its global leadership. It was a milestone that few had thought possible, and one that made international headlines. But for Vincent, it was less about symbolism and more about responsibility. "It's not about being the first," he once said in an interview, "it's about not being the last." Then came 1997, the year that changed everything. As the handover of Hong Kong approached, global investors were nervous. Many feared that China's control would destroy the city's financial freedom. Behind the scenes, Vincent became one of the quiet architects, ensuring that HSBC and Hong Kong's financial system would remain stable during the transition. He traveled frequently between Beijing, London, and Hong Kong, building relationships, translating not just language, but intention. He was, in every sense, the man between two worlds. When the handover finally arrived on July 1st, 1997, and the British flag came down over Victoria Harbour, Vincent stood among dignitaries, not as a politician, but as a man who had lived through both poverty and prosperity, empire and uncertainty. He knew that Hong Kong's survival depended not on who held power, but on who understood people. In the years that followed, he continued to climb. In 1998, he became vice chairman and chief executive of Hang Seng Bank, HSBC's subsidiary in Hong Kong. The move was strategic. Hang Seng was struggling with outdated practices and poor adaptation to new markets. Vincent transformed it into a modern financial powerhouse, emphasizing small business support, digital innovation, and mainland expansion. Under his leadership, Hang Seng's profits tripled and its reputation soared. Through it all, he never abandoned humility. Colleagues remember him walking through bank branches, shaking hands with every employee, from tellers to janitors, addressing each by name. He refused to let anyone carry his briefcase and continued using his cane long after he could have hidden it. To him, that cane wasn't a weakness. It was a reminder of where he came from. But Vincent's greatest challenge, and his ultimate triumph, was still ahead. In a world where giants like Li Ka-shing dominated Hong Kong's narrative of success, Vincent would prove that a man without wealth, privilege, or health could rise higher still through sheer intellect, integrity, and humanity. When Vincent Cheng took over Hang Seng Bank in the late 1990s, Hong Kong's financial world was still recovering from the Asian financial crisis. The collapse had humbled the region's most powerful tycoons, exposed fragile banking systems, and sent unemployment soaring. Amid this turmoil, most executives focused on survival. Vincent focused on principles. He believed a bank's greatest asset wasn't its money, but its reputation. "If we lose the trust of one customer," he told his team, "we lose 10 more we'll never meet." His insistence on ethical transparency often clashed with the profit-driven mindset of the industry. Competitors mocked him as too moral for his own good. But he didn't flinch. He quietly implemented reforms, tighter audit controls, stricter anti-bribery policies, and a zero-tolerance rule for insider lending, even if it meant turning down deals from Hong Kong's elite. One incident, in particular, defined his legacy. A senior manager was caught using company resources for personal gain, purchasing luxury goods and charging them to the corporate account. When confronted, the man begged Vincent for leniency, claiming it was a small mistake. Vincent's response was firm. Small cracks sink big ships. The man was dismissed immediately. Days later, Vincent gathered the staff and said, "If I allow one exception, we will have no foundation left to stand on." It wasn't just a lecture, it was a message that integrity was no longer optional. Under his leadership, Hang Seng became one of the most trusted banks in Asia, known for discipline and efficiency. But while Vincent thrived professionally, his health began to deteriorate. The long hours, endless travel, and constant pressure began to wear down the same body that had defied illness since childhood. His cane was now more necessity than symbol. Yet, when colleagues urged him to rest, he smiled and said, "As long as I can stand, I'll keep walking." In 2005, his resilience was rewarded. HSBC's board in London made a historic announcement. Vincent Cheng Hoi-Chuen would become the first Chinese chairman of HSBC in the bank's 140-year history. For Hong Kong, it was more than a promotion. It was a statement. A boy who once sold newspapers in Sham Shui Po was now at the helm of one of the world's most powerful financial institutions. British newspapers called it the end of an era and the beginning of another. But Vincent knew the title came with unseen risks. The world was shifting, China was rising. Western banks were facing scrutiny for their role in global inequality. HSBC stood at the crossroads of two systems, capitalist ambition and communist ideology, and Vincent was once again the man in the middle. He handled it with the same diplomacy that had guided him his entire life. In 2007, as HSBC deepened its investment in China's Ping An Insurance, he personally traveled to Beijing to negotiate the partnership, an unprecedented deal that would later shape HSBC's foothold in mainland China. Yet, behind the success, he often confessed to close friends that he felt the weight of expectation more than ever. "When I sit at that boardroom table," he said, "I carry not just myself, but every young Chinese who believes they can do the impossible." His leadership style was unconventional. He greeted security guards by name, took lunch with junior clerks, and demanded his own travel expenses be logged like everyone else's. Once, during a ceremony, he refused to sit in the front row, insisting his staff should take the seats instead. "A leader doesn't rise by being seen," he said softly, "but by helping others rise." It was that quiet humility, not power or wealth, that made him the kind of man people didn't just follow, but believed in. By the late 2000s, Vincent Cheng had become one of the most respected figures in global banking. To young professionals, he was proof that success could be achieved without privilege or corruption. To China's rising entrepreneurs, he was the model of how to earn the West's respect without losing one's roots. But to those closest to him, he was still the same man who walked with a limp, carried a notebook everywhere, and thanked every janitor by name. When the 2008 global financial crisis struck, Vincent's leadership was tested like never before. Major banks around the world collapsed. Lehman Brothers vanished overnight. Even HSBC, the giant he now led, faced dangerous exposure through its US mortgage investments. The British press questioned whether a Hong Kong-born chairman could steady the institution through its darkest hour. Vincent didn't panic. Instead of hiding behind press releases and boardrooms, he did something few banking executives dared to do. He visited the front lines. In the middle of the crisis, he walked into local branches, met with nervous employees, and reassured customers face to face. "We are not just numbers on a screen," he told them. "We are the people who hold each other together when systems fail." His calm presence helped restore public confidence at a time when fear was spreading faster than facts. Internally, he pushed for one of the toughest cleanups in HSBC's history, scaling back risky ventures, cutting executive bonuses, and prioritizing the bank's long-term health over short-term profit. He reminded the board that banking was not about chasing wealth, but protecting it. "Greed," he said, "is the most expensive debt a man can owe." While other banks sought bailouts, HSBC stood firm. When the dust settled, it was one of the few major institutions that had survived intact, a testament to Vincent's discipline and foresight. The financial press praised him as the moral compass of global banking. But privately, Vincent downplayed the glory. He would simply say, "We were just doing what was right." In 2010, after decades of service, he stepped down as HSBC's Asia-Pacific chairman. He could have retired quietly into luxury, but Vincent was never motivated by comfort. Instead, he dedicated his remaining years to education and philanthropy. He became a key figure in launching the Peking University HSBC Business School, designed to train a new generation of Chinese leaders to compete globally with ethics and innovation. He donated both money and time, lecturing young students about resilience, humility, and the art of leading with conscience. Even in semi-retirement, his schedule was relentless. He advised Hong Kong's government on economic reforms, spoke at global conferences, and continued to mentor young executives. Colleagues noticed, however, that his energy was fading. The man who had once powered through 16-hour workdays now walked slower, spoke softer, and sometimes winced when standing too long. But he never complained. When asked about retirement, he smiled. "I've been blessed to walk this far. I'll keep walking until I can't." On August 28, 2022, Vincent Cheng passed away at age 73. The news shocked Hong Kong and reverberated across the financial world. Tributes poured in from presidents, business magnates, and even former rivals. But the most touching messages came from ordinary employees, bank tellers, cleaners, clerks, who remembered his kindness more than his titles. "He never walked past anyone without looking them in the eye," one wrote. At his memorial, an old colleague read Vincent's favorite saying, "When God closes one door, he leaves another open, but you must be brave enough to walk through, even with a limp." It was, in the end, his last lesson, that courage is not the absence of weakness, but the refusal to be defined by it. In the decades since Vincent Cheng's rise from the slums of Sham Shui Po to the top of HSBC, Hong Kong has changed beyond recognition. Skylines grew taller, fortunes rose and fell, and the city that once defined resilience now fights to preserve its soul. But among the glitter of glass towers and neon lights, Vincent's story endures, not as a tale of wealth, but of will. He left behind no dynastic empire, no sprawling family conglomerate, no monuments built in his name. What he built instead was something far rarer, a standard. In a city obsessed with power, he proved that decency could be stronger than greed. In a profession ruled by privilege, he proved that humility could command respect. And in a world that often celebrates those who win by any means, he showed that the most extraordinary victories are those achieved without losing one's humanity. Students at the Peking University HSBC Business School, the institution that now carries his name, still read his words etched into a plaque near the entrance. "Success is not climbing higher than others, it's lifting others with you." For many who once worked under him, those words became more than a motto. They became a way of life. When historians write about Hong Kong's transformation from a colonial port into a global powerhouse, Vincent Cheng's name will appear beside the city's greatest builders, not because of the towers he financed, but because of the values he restored. He was born poor, crippled, and forgotten. Yet he walked further than anyone thought possible, with a limp, a purpose, and a heart that never stopped believing that good men could still win.